Well, hello again. Welcome back to stage 2 here at Procurement and Supply Chain Live London 2024. If you have any questions throughout the next 2 days, if you're in the room, pop your hand up. If you are watching online, hello around the world, then use the app, which I hope you've downloaded by now, to ask questions. They come straight through to my laptop, and I'll ask them on your behalf. We're going to hear now from somebody who we've already heard from. Matthew Buckingham asked a question in the previous keynote speech. Matthew, you're Vice President of Business Development and Alliances at Focal Point, the procurement software company, if you'd like to take your place at the lectern, for a 15 or 20-minute session on Procurement 4.0, a new era of innovation and strategic growth. Thank you, Matthew.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, glad to be here. Just wanted to follow on from the previous presentation. I 100% agree with your first slide where you talked about people are first. Now, I work for Focal Point. Focal Point's a procurement solution. Come and talk to us. We have a booth. That's the last of the plugging I'm going to do. But we believe the same thing. We believe people are the key to procurement, and what we want to do is enable those people to do a better job. So what I want to talk about today, though, is Procurement 4.0. So what do I mean by a new era of innovation and strategic growth? Well, what I mean is that the whole way that procurement has been done over the last 100 years has changed. You know, what we need is a very different way of doing things because challenges have increased as time's gone on. And I would say it's an exciting time to be in procurement. Nobody's ever said that before. You know, procurement is not the sexy part of the business, right? It never was. It is now. It's getting really cool. It's a great place to be. So why do I think that? I think that because, you know, it gives us the opportunity to actually change the business now. We started back in, let's say, 1997, saving money. That was kind of the end of the period of saving money was the thing that we wanted to do. Things changed. We had to move on. We had to save our company now. That's what we're really interested in. We have to think about risks. We have to think about what other things are impacting our business. And then we had to save the world. You know, sustainability is key. All these different pressures are coming onto procurement over the years. But what's next? How do we continue to support all of those things? Because these aren't exclusive. You know, you still need to save money. I absolutely appreciate that. You still need to save your company. You have to control the risk and everything else. And you still need to save the damn world at the same time. But how do you do all of those things together? So how you do those things is what I want to talk about. But let's go back in time. So it's now, what time is it? It's, I don't know, 1988. Me, I'm a young man. This grey here, not there. It's looking really good, no beard even. But it's 1988. I'm working for a paper merchant in an office in England, and I'm buying paper. And I'm buying from all these different suppliers and everything, and I'm trying to understand who I can buy from the cheapest possible. And I'm starting to expand the network out because, you know, the UK suppliers are great, but they're kind of expensive. Let's look at the US, let's look at China, let's look at Thailand. And we're trying to get paper from lots of different places. And we're really trying to save money. But what am I using to do that? What I'm using to do that at that time is, I had telex, actually. I was using telex to buy stuff. I was using faxes. That was a real innovation, bringing fax in. As time went on, emails came in, made stuff faster, made it much easier to do things. And then the P2P started to come in. So the first one that I remember was Ariba in 1996. I actually know a couple of the founders of Ariba now. But 1996, they started. But you've got these very basic tools, and it's just about saving money. So what we're trying to do is to really get onto that understanding of just how we can control our partners, but we're controlling the partners. The partners are not, or the suppliers are not partners, I should say. They're really just people that we buy from. And if you're not cheap enough, you're not cheap enough. I think a good example of this is probably Walmart. So Walmart in the US, biggest company in the world, 2.5 million employees now. Late 90s, they had this directive that they needed to save money. So they're trying to save money across the board in everything they possibly do. And they're just screwing down the suppliers on everything. I think another example could be within manufacturing, where you had the just-in-time. So Toyota started this. That was probably back in the 80s. You know, and the oil crisis of the 70s had promoted some of this, be nice to your suppliers and be friendly with your suppliers, but really it didn't carry on too much. After we all got cheap oil again, nobody cared anymore. But just-in-time was pushing the suppliers to deliver exactly the right time, at exactly the right price. Deliver or be damned was kind of where we got to. Let's fast forward a bit. So now it's around 2000. There's a new focus on managing business risk. You know, security risks are out there, financial risks are out there. So what we're really thinking about here is you know, things like Y2K. We were all frightened to death of Y2K, if you remember. Any of you remember? I'm probably the oldest person in the room. But Y2K was going to be a massive issue, and suddenly everybody woke up and thought, how am I going to manage this with my suppliers? And then you had the financial risks of the crashes. So the dot-com bubble burst in about 2001, if I remember. This kind of risk and companies going bankrupt is a big deal for procurement people. So now we're having to save the company. We're having to really think about how we can manage that risk and continue to deal and to trade with people. But we're still saving money at the same time. So don't think that we're not trying to save money at the same time. But the systems that we're dealing with now is, you know, email has become prevalent. Everybody's using Excel now as well. Excel's an awesome procurement tool. We all use Excel. I use Excel in sales as well. I have Salesforce. I use Excel. But all of these different tools are being used to enable you to transact, but everything you're doing around risk is kind of in this Excel place. You're trying to think of controlling them. But what do? You start to receive new systems. You start to receive CLMs. You start to receive SRMs. ERP is still there and still very prevalent. And P2P, obviously, is coming up now. You know, it's still relatively basic. But I think 2010 or 11 or 12, Ariba was bought by SAP. I was working for SAP at that time. And other tools start to come forward now. I think Cooper was formed in 2009. There's other solutions out there as well, as you would say on the BBC. But I think the continued development of these systems makes it actually more complicated for everybody now. So now what are you worried about? You're worried about saving money. You're worried about saving the company. Financial risk, other risks come into it as well. And you've got a bigger expanse of solutions out there, but it's not huge. You can manage it. Me personally, I'm working for the same company that I was buying paper from, but I've moved into technology at this point, so I'm working for the CIO. I'm not sure if it was a good move or a bad move, but I'm now program director for SAP, so I'm rolling out SAP globally. I'm trying to get everything I possibly can squeezed into SAP at this point. So this is 2007 or 8. I'm trying to squeeze everything I can in because I see the value of that integrated system. But it's not really integrated, right? You're still having to plug stuff together. Even today, most systems don't plug together that easily. Even if they're owned by the same company, a lot of the time they don't plug together too easily. So that's becoming a big issue. And the other thing that we've now starting to get in is no PO, no pay starts to become prevalent. Everybody thinks you need a PO for everything, which you probably do. If you want to control your costs, POs are important. But that adds complexity as well, especially if you haven't got a system to run it. It becomes really difficult. So you're now starting to get added risks coming in as well, because now your transactional data is moving between systems and it's going in and out of your company. And now SaaS starts to come in as well. So that complicates stuff even more. And when it was on-prem and you had it all tucked away in your servers, it was kind of easy. So we move on to Procurement 3.0. This is kind of where most people are at the moment. So either at the start of it or doing well with it, it doesn't really matter too much, but you're trying to manage all of your procurement in one place. You're trying to get as much spend under management as possible, as we just heard, to make sure that you're controlling, first of all, the cost. Cost is still very, very important, but we need to now start thinking about new things as well. Risk hasn't gone away as well, by the way. So now we're thinking about ESG, we're thinking about the carbon footprint, we're thinking about sustainability generally, we're thinking about DEI, we're thinking about, slave labor, we're thinking about all these kinds of things. And all of that's coming together as well. So what does that do? That prompts new software suppliers. Those darn software suppliers, we keep building stuff and we keep wanting you to plug it all together, and it doesn't work half the time. To plug it together, I mean, the systems work normally. They're pretty good, except for the ones that sell slideware, but that's okay. So now you've got this big problem, and you've got social media coming into the mix now as well. So there's another risk there. Okay, reputational risk. People can slam your business so quickly and so effectively on social media. You just want one influencer against you, and you're kind of done nowadays. It's a big deal. So how can we start to control that sort of stuff as well? And then, ethical consumption becomes a big deal as well at this point. So moving through that, how do you manage that? Other things coming in to influence that as well are things like, directives, corporate sustainability reporting directive. I did have to read that one. California's SB 253 and 261, for example. All of these things are coming in to impact you. Here in the UK, the UK's Financial Conduct Authority. Those kinds of things are now coming in to impact you. So now you've not only got pressure internally from the top down, save money, from the bottom up almost, sustainability, ESG, DEI, from the councils within your company, but now you've got external people saying, hey, you need to report carbon. Hey, you need to report this. You need to report that. So let's bring all of that together. And it gets even more complicated. I think the company, Patagonia, had a really good initiative around this, and they have it going, and they've had it actually since the conception of the business pretty much, which is about ethical sourcing and buying from the right place at the right time. They're not a customer of ours, by the way. They should be, but they're not. But they're buying from the right place at the right time with the right values behind it as well. And what tools are we using? Email's still there. Everybody's using email, right? I use email 150 emails a day or whatever I get. 97% of them you delete and the others you forget to read. P2P and ERP are there and very, very strong. So P2P is really improved. It's got better. The challenges from these younger companies coming in has made all of the systems better for sure. But they're not really still integrated solutions, because what are people doing within these companies? They're basically buying pieces and then trying to plug them together. Now, I was 10 years with SAP, love SAP, one of the best companies I've ever worked for in my life. But they suck at trying to stitch stuff together. It's really difficult, and I understand that, but don't buy it then if you can't do it. But that kind of thing is a big deal. So where we are now is we've got email, we've got Excel, where you're doing a lot of your business. You've got P2P solutions, where you're getting, if you're lucky, 40% of your spend through. Many companies, it's 1%, and that's honestly not the first time I've heard that. It's 1% of your spend going through your P2P solution. And then you've got some in SAP, some in Oracle, some in Dynamics. Wherever you've got all of these transactions going through, suddenly you've got a load of data, but it's here's some data, here's some data, here's some data. So how do you manage that? How do you continue to improve by stitching all of that together? And this is what Procurement 4.0 is all about. It's about data. I mean, data is the absolute driving force behind Procurement 4.0. It's the thing that makes Procurement 4.0 work. So you've maybe heard of Industry 4.0. Most of us have. That's actually been plugging away for 5 or 6 years now. People have been talking about that. And it's often about Internet of Things. It's about AI. First time I mentioned AI, everybody. Bonus. But it's all about plugging different systems together. Procurement 4.0, very, very similar. So we're not expecting anybody out there to be able to run all of their procurement in one system. You know, best of breed makes sense for many companies. You know, you need a P2P probably, possibly. You need an ERP definitely, because otherwise your audits are going to be really difficult. But you also need something around ethical sourcing, around sustainability, around different things. And often those tools that people have brought in are not connected to procurement purely. So, you know, you start talking about DEI, and people say, hey, we need to do DEI with our suppliers. Here's the tool we bought 2 years ago. Yeah, it's probably not going to work, but let's do our best with it, because procurement doesn't get the money to invest either. I think that's probably fair. Most people will agree with that. I know that as a sales guy. But what you also need to think about is how you can not only plug those systems together, but make them work more effectively within the business so that you can report back to the business, so you can tell the business exactly what's going on. But you don't want to be looking in your rear view mirror all the time. You know, analytics are great, really good. That's what you did 3 months ago. Fantastic, good. What are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow, more importantly? What are you doing next month? So you need to use that data to actually start predicting what's going to be happening. And this is what 4.0 is about. It's enabling people to do their jobs better. So, you know, the driving force is the data, but the pillars that are supporting the whole of this 4.0, you know, it becomes automation. So you want to automate as much as you can. I always say automate the automatable. So if it's simple, if it's predictable, you can automate it. And that's the thing that computers are really, really good at. They can do that kind of stuff. You know, AI is a pillar. It's important going forward. Not as important as, oh, I think it's just gone off. Not as important, I think, as many people are making it sound. And when you're trying to get budget, I heard a giggle over here, something about budget earlier. But when you're talking about budget, if you say it's AI, yep, you can have as much money as you want. It's not new. You know, AI has been out there for 100 years or whatever it is, since 1940 something anyway. But AI is really important, and it's an important pillar of procurement for sure. And that is what's going to help you to understand your data much better. But I always think AI, in that context, should be supporting HI, as I call it, human intelligence. So it should be really helping your people within procurement to do better category strategies. It should be helping you in procurement to deal better with your suppliers so that you can do your quarterly business reviews much more effectively and much more efficiently. And actually do the quarterly business reviews as well would be cool, right? We all talk about them, but we do them for that amount of our suppliers. If we can expand that out and actually start to build the supplier quarterly business reviews into our category strategies, then we're getting to a point that we can actually not only drive down the cost, because that's not our main objective anymore, it's about the security of our company. It's about making sure that the company is secure out there, but it's also about saving the world still. So we now have this best of breed solution out there. How do you stitch all those together? That's the question. And how do you get the data that you can actually control that data going forward and understand the next steps of how you manage risk, because there's new risks coming. We all saw that in 2020. None of us expected to be sitting at home doing our work only at home for a year or whatever it was. I was in the US, so it's like 2 months. But the rest of the world, it locked down for a lot longer. That kind of thing was not predicted by anybody. We need to be able to predict that in the future. Now, I don't have a magic panacea to predict the next COVID. I wish I did, because I'd be really rich, because I could predict other stuff as well. But we do have a way to mitigate that and understand what that impact could be on us within procurement if something does go down in, I don't know, there's so many wars going on at the moment, you can't keep up with it, unfortunately. But with the impact, I mean, a great impact was, when the Ukraine war started 2.5 years ago, that corn suddenly became a huge commodity that nobody could get hold of very easily, because most of the corn comes from Russia and Ukraine. So what you need to be able to do is say, okay, if something happens somewhere in the world, geopolitical or in some other way, how do we cope with that? How do we shorten that supply chain, which is another directive that people are being given to do? How do we shorten it so that we're at less risk in the future? So I think in closing, what I'd like to say is, Procurement 4.0 it's really about making sure that you have all your data in the right place, that you're able to analyze that data, look at that data, and predict from that data. And that data helps your teams in procurement to do their job better, which then enables you to create value for the company. So this is why I'm saying it's a great time to be in procurement, because suddenly procurement is seen. It's so important that you can produce for the CEO, the CFO, what your predictions are for the future. And if you can do that, you can not only affect the bottom line by reducing the cost, you can affect the top line of the company as well. And you can actually start to be not just a cost center, you can start to be a value generator for the company. And I think that's what everybody who works for a company wants to do. They want their companies to be successful. I certainly do. So hopefully that was something that interested you, and over to you.
Thank you. Any questions from within here? We've got time for one question. Forgive me, sir. There's a microphone running across the room at lightning speed to you.
Hi there. Thanks for the presentation. Great presentation. So you've talked through the timeline of procurement. Have you got any thoughts what Procurement 5.0 might look like?
Oh my goodness,
that's the question.
That's an excellent question. I like that. I think the next step, artificial intelligence, I kind of poo-pooed it a little bit. I don't totally agree with what I said. I think at the moment it's in its nascent stage to some extent of generative AI and everything. And it's come to prominence because of OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? Because I use it all the time, honestly. But I think where I see it going next is that the prediction becomes much stronger. The actual understanding, but also the discovery starts to become different as well. So not only are we now looking at the data and understanding the data so that we can predict and mitigate strategies, but we're probably starting to get to the point where the automation of the process gives us more and more data, and the data is cleaner and better. Because most of you have lots and lots of data. Everybody in here probably says their data sucks. It's what I hear all the time from people I talk to. So as we get cleaner and better data, I think it's a progression. Maybe it's 4.1 rather than 5.0. I'll probably be dead by the time of 5.0, I don't know. At least retired, I hope. But we'll see.
Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Matthew Buckingham.